Hey guys, I'm Momojin and you are watching Support or Feed. This time around we're featuring Braum. And if you have not already watched the last video, which is This Is Why We Love to Play Braum, it's already up. Go ahead and catch up on it and tell me how you feel about it under the comments in that video. And yeah. So anyway, this time around, after I've come up with my impressions video, I decided to come up with tips and tricks featuring not so much as my rune masteries and skill build, but on rather how to play these champions in terms of getting used to his mechanics, on how to use each individual skill of Braum, his Q, his W, his E and R, and also like in terms of how would you build him in terms of skill builds, because it's really up for you guys to decide, at least in my opinion. Okay, so before we get into that, right, I just want to let you guys know that if you have any other questions, right, in terms of Braum tips and tricks and all that, please don't be afraid to put down in the comments so that I'll be ready to just answer them and compile another Braum tips and tricks video for your viewing pleasure and also for your knowledge. Okay, this time around I want to shout out to fyg.elite. He is the one who's playing this lovely Vayne here, and he really does a good job. And I guess, like, if you know, being a support dilemma, the problem with playing support, especially for me at least, is you can only be as good as your other lane partner allows you to be. Okay, because for support you really have to rely on them pulling their own, so to speak, their ass, and if they're good, then you can be good. So without further ado, let me get back into the tips and tricks. Okay, first off, right, I want to let you guys know that in terms of building Braum's skill, right, you have two ways of going about with it. It depends mostly on how your ADC plays out or your lane partner plays out, because if he's more of aggressive type, okay, this applies especially to those support players who are playing public queues. Okay, you really have to take note on, as you progress through, you gotta ask, okay, whether your support is an aggressive type or a passive type. Because if he's aggressive type, you can go ahead and add on Q, and you add the Winter's Bite, you max it out so you can poke the enemy. And if your enemy is smart enough, I mean not enemy, your ally is smart enough, he would go ahead and follow up, especially if he knows that he's supposed to get those stacks back up. Okay. Oh, before I get onto that, this video, this part of the fight, right, in this recording, is actually part of the This Is Why We Love to Play video. Yeah, This Is Why We Love to Play Braum video. So I don't know whether you noticed that scene, but this is part from this game, okay, that I'm featuring right now. So yeah, if it's aggressive, you go ahead and max your Q first. So what I'm trying to say is, what you would do at level 1, you add Q, level 2 you probably add E, then level 3 you add W, and then you go ahead and max Q first. Okay, if your ally, your ADC in your own lane is really aggressive and knows what to play, and especially the lane composition in terms of the enemy who you're up against, and you have an advantage, go ahead and max Q. But if your ADC is a passive type, right, I highly recommend maxing E first, just because of the amount of utility you get from it. It increases the duration of your shield, it increases the what else, the damage reduction of the shield to up to, I believe, 50% at level 5. Okay, and that is a huge deal. Like, whenever your ADC gets caught, especially if you think it's a pub ADC, or whether it's your friend and he gets caught, you can just put up that shield, and I guess your teammate will feel really safe. Okay, and of course we have a team fight here. My ADC definitely. This is where I did one of the most scrub ults you would ever see in your life. Whatever. Okay, coming back to it, right? Then you have another tip on using Q, right? Would be if you have the option to auto attack an enemy, especially if you're camping in a brush and the enemy sort of wants to face check. Let him face check, let him come into the brush, you hit him once, then only you shoot your Q out, just to sort of like further enhance the amount of stacks you can put onto your enemy. And of course that's one instance of really bad unbreakable wall setup which I just did in that game just now. Okay, so that's my tip on Q. And also, right, the reason why you would want to max Q is also for the cooldown reduction on it, especially when you have 40% cooldown reduction along with maxing Q, right? What happens is amazing. You cools down, I think, like every 3.6 seconds, and that is insane. That's basically the duration of the slow, and after the enemy gets his stun procced on, okay, thanks to your ADC or whoever your ally. And this is actually a bad, yeah, okay, I'm telling you guys tips, but during my laning phase I basically mess up, okay. I won't say I'm perfect, but I'm definitely abiding by these principles when I've been playing Braum so far, okay. So like I said, Q, right, 3.6 cooldown, 3.6 second cooldown, right. After the enemy gets slowed and his stun gets procced about, you can basically throw your Q on that enemy again. That is how fast Winter's Bite cools down, and is insanely good. Okay. And then the next thing, like I want to say, is there's also a reason why you would want to max E first. Okay. Like I said, E, the cooldown gets lower, blah blah. The damage reduction from projectiles also increases, and all that good stuff. Okay, but one thing you gotta take note though, when you get max cooldown on the maximum cooldown of Unbreakable, I believe, including if you take account 40% cooldown reduction, it's about 6 seconds, I believe, 6 or 6.5 seconds. Okay. But the problem is, you must remember, when you have Unbreakable up, right, your skill doesn't go on cooldown yet. It only goes on cooldown the moment your Unbreakable wears off, okay? So, that being said, right, it does not mean that when you have Unbreakable up, and the moment it ends, okay, your skill just needs another 2.5 seconds to cool down, and then you can have your Unbreakable up again. This is because of this that it puts Unbreakable, right, the Unbreakable skill about the same cooldown as Yasuo's Wind Wall, surprisingly. If you max cooldown reduction on Yasuo, right, and you max his Wind Wall, of course, it will be about the same cooldown that you experience with Bronze Unbreakable and Yasuo's Wind Wall, right? It's not to say that, oh, you have Braum here, you're probably going to have his utility shield on a better cooldown than Yasuo's Wind Wall. No, not at all. The reason why I know this is because prior to playing Braum, I've been playing a lot of Yasuo support just to get myself well acquainted with the Braum Guardian support based mechanic, where you bounce back and forth, like I said, in between your allies and the enemy, okay, enemy front lines. Okay, coming back, we have W, okay. What I want you to do, right, usually the way I play Braum is, if I can, I would stick to my ADC as much as I can in terms of laning phase, okay. There's a more complex dilemma in terms of team fights later on, but I won't get into that in this video, okay. Like I said, what I do is, even though you can reposition yourself with W, right, it does not by any means make you like give you the option to put yourself in off position, so that you can come back later with W and sort of help your teammate, help your ADC or APC or whatever. Because I believe, right, that it's not leap, that what's that skill called? Stand behind me. That leaps, that repositioning skill for Braum. It's not just a repositioning skill. You must remember that you have 3 seconds of armor and MR buff, and it's not just for you, it's also for your ally. And yeah, and with a 6.5 second cooldown, I believe that's maximum in, if you take into consideration a 40% cooldown reduction. Okay, that's like every 3.5 seconds you can give one of your allies a good 3 second armor MR buff. Yeah. So back to this game, right? If you haven't noticed already, right? A couple of times you noticed that when I respawn, Kale is just standing in the center. Yeah, then you'd probably be right that if you guess that this game is actually a 4v5. Yeah. The reason why I put this up was because there are a lot of plays that I managed to make and I made successfully. Of course, there are a lot of mistakes as well, which I would learn as well. But anyway, nonetheless, this game was fun until a certain point where it's just completely 5v4. We just can't fight back. Okay, but in the meantime, right, you will see a lot of like good plays. Okay, so like I said, W. Although you can reposition yourself to your ADC or whatever, but do not take it for granted and put yourself in like terrible situations and terrible position. This is where I'm late to support my ADC, like completely useless. Okay, one more tip. Now we are moving on to Unbreakable. Okay, his shield skill that is really close, resembling to Yasuo's wind wall. Okay, except that its rewards are much less in terms of Yasuo's wind wall. Okay, what I want you guys to do, right, is for those of you who are too used to normal casting, right, in this game, I want you to go to your key bindings and set your E skill to a quick cast or smart cast. Okay, the reason why I highly recommend doing this is because E Unbreakable, right, is a skill that in terms of cast accuracy the requirement is not that high, because the only thing that you do with E is you cast in the proper direction or the correct direction in each team fight. Okay, and it's not as hard to pull off as casting at a specific position, specific point in a team battle or a team fight. So, and the other reason is because you guys should already know that if you want to put up good unbreakable walls, you want to set up good unbreakable walls, right, or unbreakable shields, whatever, you want to use it as a reactionary skill, and the only way to do it is you put it as a quick cast, smart cast. So for those of you who already play like are accustomed to quick cast, smart cast, for you, this is where I do a little derp there, because I was expecting Jinx to ult, but I failed to notice that she already ulted somewhere else and her ult's on cooldown. So anyway, yeah, even though I play normal casting, in other words, I click a spell, I left click, I click a spell, I left click, right? But unusually, like, weird, right? But I actually play my Unbreakable Shield as a cooldown, as a quick cast skill for the reactionary reaction speed that is necessary to cast it, which I think is invaluable. So yeah, because what happens is, in terms of setting up good unbreakables, right, is first of all, to use this spell, okay, I highly recommend not blocking like the kinds of spell that are initiation types, like Blitzcrank's hooks, Morgana's Q, okay, all of this stuff. Because first of all, you gotta remember that it does not stop the crowd control effect, okay? So what you really want to do is there's no real point in blocking those. The only thing you will be blocking is the damage, okay? But everything else from the initiation type skills, you're gonna get affected. What I usually do for, right, which makes it invaluable, is the follow-up projectiles after someone in your team gets initiated on, and that's actually the best time to put up your Unbreakable. Yeah, the same thing applies to Yasuo's win wall in my opinion. In fact, because if I ever put up a spot of feed with Yasuo video featuring tips and tricks on how to use him, more specifically in terms of his win wall, right, you would hear me say the same tip. Okay. So right here, I believe is our last redeeming team fight in terms of like a good team fight. But I don't know. I think it's probably past. Okay. So there you have it. I've covered Q. I've covered my Winter's Bite, Braum's Winter's Bite, Stand Behind Me, Unbreakable, and lastly Ultimate. Okay, Braum's Ultimate. I know you guys are probably really tempted to use it as a initiation skill, catch enemies off guard and all that. But one thing you gotta take note is that his ult, right, actually greatly excels if you use it defensively, because the way it's cast, right, is there's like a bunch of ice that comes around you, like pops up around you, and then you have consecutive like waves of ice that come up in front, that extend out, okay, in whatever direction you cast, okay. And you guys should take note by now that the way this skill works is, right, the first champion it hits, it gives the maximum knock-up or airborne crowd control effect, okay? Whereas consecutively, it gets like really crappy. It's almost non-existent, the knock-up. So, but when you catch enemies around you, okay, it doesn't matter which is first, who is first, because all the champions, right, that get caught in your first initial cast of Glacial Fissure around you is considered like first, like everyone's first time there. So, like, if you use it, in other words, right, what I'm trying to say, if you use it as a pulverize, okay, you will give the enemies around you the best amount of 1.5 second airborne crowd control effect that you can provide your ADC with, which is like tremendously and like infinitely more useful than it being used as a initiation skill. So that is actually sort of the risk-reward mechanics of Braum, whereby most of his spells, I don't know if you guys know this, right, is really good defensive spells, okay? That's their highest rewards that you can get out of them, okay? But if you use them as initiation skills, you won't get so much of a reward out of it, but you still get some good effect to it. So anyway, that's my last death right over there, where I died along with Vayne. Enemy is gonna push down all the towers. So anyway, see you guys in the next video.